of the monks to find a suitable environment, but he said even there they talk.
No getting away from it.
There's no place for him to. Yeah, there's no place for him to go where he won't have external interruption.
I think that's the whole point, isn't
Hello, all. That's sort of our world and our story, right? There's no place to hide. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good morning.
Lucy, what is that?
It's a
Wow, that's a duck,
Little duckling.
and it's getting big.
Has she
it's
imprinted on you?
It's
Are you now the mother?
I am. It follows me everywhere.
Gail used to do that when she was a child. Yeah.
It sits on my arm, like in the elbow, or it sits here while I'm working. And,
What is the lifespan of ducks?
oh, I don't know. I would guess it's similar to chickens, like 5 or 6 years, something like that.
So you're going to have a duckling for a while.
We'll see. I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do with it. But for now, it's at least in my care.
But you're moving, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to make life a little bit complicated, but yeah, I don't know. I might be able to find someone else who has ducks to take it when it's a bit bigger, but I think for now it's my duty.
Hey, Carl.
I can hear the birds. Or is that the duckling?
That's the duckling. I'll mute myself. So it's been swimming, so it's preening its feathers and it's going a bit nuts right now.
Sam, is Tammy coming?
I believe so. I haven't heard otherwise. I also believe Harry is coming as well.
Evening, Gertrude. We think there are a couple more coming, so we're awaiting.
How was yesterday, Sam?
It feels like we barely got started, and I don't know. I'm probably the fourth person you should ask. You should ask Doug and Gertrude and see how it went. I mean, I really enjoy being able to.
Yeah, Sam, how old are you? Do you mind my asking?
I'm 29 with a lot of experience. No, I'm just kidding. How old do I look?
Don't ask me. I'm terrible.
I'm really curious. I don't take it personally one way or the other. You know, I take it just very matter of factly. So anybody, who would like to guess, I would love to hear the guess. Jaswinder, Anna, Gertrude, Lucy, Carl. And I will tell you after you guess.
54.
What?
54.
54? Okay. Anna, what's your guess?
33.
30. Come on, be serious, please.
This is hard.
52.
54, 52. Okay, Carl? Actually, Carl may know, so.
I'm not sure, but I'll say 57.
Okay.
An anniversary of 39.
Gertrude, you're going to make a guess? Oh, Doug? Yeah.
I did in the chat.
Well,
we were talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm terrible at this. So you could be anywhere between 30 and 65 to me. But on the premise that it's somewhere, north of 50, just based on where you've been and what you've done, which was really the point of the question, which is if you think about how many years years of stuff you've got to share, it's okay that we've only scratched the surface. Like, that makes sense. We're only 4 hours in? How many years of accumulation of stuff to share have you had putting it together?
I'll answer.
Dan, you're going to guess now?
I will, if Lucy's willing to give us a guess.
I'm going to go with hang on. I'm going to go with 50. I would have said 49 or 48, but everyone is going over, so I'm starting to doubt myself.
So thank you all for your guesses. I am, let's see, let me figure this out. I am actually, I'm going to turn 59 this year. I'm actually 58 right now. So I think Jaswinder was closest. But I appreciate the 32 guess, Anna. I really do. As well as the 49 guess, Lucy. That's.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised. Or maybe I'm just really bad at guessing ages.
No, like I said, I really appreciate it. I don't take it one way or the other. I enjoy these guesses, so I just told you. In fact, I think I kind of leaked it when I was telling you about when I was born and when I came to the U.S. and how old I was when I came to the U.S. So it was probably all back then.
But we are not mathematicians.
You don't have to. All you have to be is arithmetician.
Arithmetician. Okay.
Actually,
so you're born which year?
59.
59.
In fact, I was talking to Tammy yesterday, and I was talking about my mathematics approach to things, and she actually accused me of being mathalicious or something like that. Which sounded like a funny word,
Is she coming?
I thought she was, yes. I thought Harry was too.
We have somebody called Esteban here.
Yeah, Esteban
I
Trev.
haven't met. Could introduce them or talk to them.
Yeah, I haven't met Esteban yet. Esteban, are you there? Although he's been active on Facebook, I believe. And Glenn, we're missing Glenn.
Yeah, yes, I just joined to see what was going on.
Esteban, do you have a camera?
Yeah, but I prefer not to use it. Sorry for that. Is that okay?
Fine.
That's allowed. That's allowed.
So what's the gist of what's going on? I just joined in, and I don't want to shift the conversation, but I'm shifting it. So what's going on?
We haven't actually started yet. We usually do a sort of check-in, which we haven't even done. And then after that, it's really a free-for-all. Whatever happens, happens.
Okay.
Doug could give you a bit more, but you do notice there is a word unblocking associated with these Sunday events. So typically the question in the background is, what blocks us from moving forward? In whatever sense you want to take that.
Well, from where I stand, and what you all have seen me post on Facebook, you probably realize that one of the key issues that I hone in are the words that we use, the models we use. So for instance, here you're talking about blocking, which creates a block. instead of talking about enabling or opening it up or exploring the possibilities. And it's a very simple switch from using one word to using another word, but for some reason we keep using certain words that keep us in that domain.
I do appreciate your point. I think that when you were talking about that, I think the thing that filters through my mind is implications of enabling in the codependency arena. So likewise, as blocking could trigger perhaps some in you, other words like enabling can trigger some in me or others. So this whole area is a very interesting one. We have definitely influenced it quite a bit by the choice of words, but please don't let the choice of words block you. Over.
Yeah, I don't. It's just that, well, you used one word right now that I didn't hear before, the arena. Maybe you can repeat what that was. I'm not familiar with that word, but let me share a story with you. The other day I was talking with a person, and I wanted to shift the conversation from a discussion towards a dialogue. Okay? And basically I was asking just to use the word dialogue instead of discussion. For me, discussion has to do with confrontation, whereas dialogue has to do with shared understanding of what's going on. And for some reason, this person kept using the word argumentation, debate, instead of moving over to dialogue. And they said, well, look, one word or the other word, it's the same thing. And I said, well, if it's the same thing, how come every time you use that term or that idea, you always tend to use one side instead of using the other side? Can you see that?
Have you asked yourself that question?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to goes to the idea that my words create my reality, but they also reflect my reality. And if I'm using one term over another, that's ultimately my truth. So I absolutely appreciate the sort of domain that you're focusing on. We're part of the reason for the unblocking, by the way, was a term that I'm not sure I've ever been comfortable with for the Sunday conversations. It was actually originated or authored by somebody else, but I think the substantive intention of the Sunday conversations are exactly what you're picking up on, which is how do I, as an individual, get triggered in a way that takes me out of conversation and dialogue and connection. And when groups of people try to work together and collaborate and co-create and generate and share, how many ways to Sunday are there times where people are reactive in a way that disconnects us? And to what degree in the current culture and paradigm we live in is that level of awareness, collective awareness, not even part of the conversation, nor does it have any importance attached to it. So I think part of what happens here is about exploring and bringing to explicit, express, conscious awareness how sensitive the mechanisms are for people to drop out or be disconnected or be reactive, or say or act or behave in a way that has that effect on others.
Well, from what I have seen is usually, this last week I've been more interested in how we dialogue about stuff than the stuff we dialogue about. I don't know if that makes sense to any of you, or if you make sense of that. But basically is we're talking about whatever topic you want to talk about, okay? And we each are going about talking about that topic from different angles. For some reason, when some particular angles are not welcome and are not allowed, and curiously enough, those are the angles that would change and enable one to open up.
So I would also like to ask you, Esteban, whether you think that actually just changing the word will change the mindset of the person, or whether it is also worth actually focusing on those negative aspects. What I'm hearing from you is that you prefer to use words that are positive and that bring an opening rather than words of disconnection and negativity. And so I'm asking, first of all, whether just substituting those positive words is actually going to change the mindset of the person. But also my feeling is that actually focusing on those negative expressions is very valuable. There's something there which is helpful because people, in fact, culturally, don't have many opportunities to express that negativity. On the whole, we are encouraged to always express the positive and focus on the positive. So I think sometimes it's also important to be able to focus on the negative.
Okay, let me use an example, and you tell me if, and please realize that I'm using this example not because of you or anyone here, but just because of it's an example that I find useful. If I call anyone here stubborn, or if I call them persistent, will that have an impact on what they do and how they perceive the same characteristic that I'm describing?
Yeah, that sounds to me as though you're insulting them. Yeah.
Yeah, but if
it's very derogative term. Yeah.
Okay, so if I call you that you're very determinate and set on your ways, you may perceive that as not an insult, but a compliment.
Esteban, may I?
Yes.
What comes out of your mouth is a reflection of you, not a reflection of me.
Yes. the example I used just now, let me use another example that may help, okay? If we talk about someone being stubborn or someone being humble, I mean arrogant and humble, most people will associate not good things to being as a stubborn or I forgot the other word. I'm sorry. My native language is Spanish, so it's bear with me.
Persistent
The
was the other
issue
word.
with being arrogant and being humble is that both are exaggerations of self-esteem. Can you see that?
I can see there's a lot of discernment and judgment.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, every word has connotations that people take differently and things. So I had a group that pretty much got derailed because somebody used the term advisor, and in the federal government, there's a whole Federal Advisory Act, and so that's a very loaded term. And it's like, no, they can't be at. You can't call somebody an advisor. That has so, and then so yeah, I kind of agree with Esteban that we do have. I mean, there is. You're attracting the opposite of what you want sometimes, but when you use the negative, because our unconscious doesn't understand negatives. There just is. So
Yes,
smoking,
exactly.
like, stop smoking. All your subconscious hears is smoking, type of thing. And there's also no concept of time. Everything is now. So
yes. So if we want to talk, for instance, if we want to talk about negativity, we can talk about non-positivity. And thus the focus indirectly is on positivity, though we're talking about whatever the topic we needed to talk about. And in what you just said, that words have loaded meanings, I personally have the other stand where we associate certain meanings to words. And why do we associate to certain words certain meanings may depend more on us than us listeners than speakers.
I would like to say something about it. I think I get your point, Esteban. And before we go deeper into that, I would like to have a check-in, so everybody is like here.
Okay.
Just two thoughts, and this just short. One is when somebody changes his name and wants to tell everybody they should use the new name. This is hard work because it's so trained, and I think that's also a part of it, because we're used to using it in a specific way, and this is an detraining and new training to do that differently. And the other one is in appreciative inquiry, when we look at the core themes, we first look what's not working, and then we say not what you want to go away from, but where do you want to go. And so we create that new so when we have core themes, they are directing in the direction you want to go. So I think there is also that kernel to look at what's not working, and then start looking in the direction we want to go. And so I stop this, and I would like That's my feeling. So
I hear you. I have something to say, but let's do the check-in, and then if there's time or interest, we can get into what the comments about this. Is that okay?
I'll check in. It's been raining all day today, which has been a real a luxury to have so much rain. I feel the earth really welcoming all this water because it's been so dry. And I've had a very lazy day after having an active day yesterday. And that's me, happy to be here.
I'm here in the West Midlands, UK. It's been raining for 48 hours non-stop. As Anna said, it's very welcome because we've had nearly 4 weeks of sunshine. I'm trying to do some silent meditation. It's not quite working out as I was trying to explain to Doug. I'm listening in, so if I'm not switching the camera on, please don't take it the wrong way. I'm just not. I'm feeling slightly spaced out, which I think is good, and I'd like to stay there. Thank you.
I can go. The duckling just pooped on me. That's the latest update from here. Yeah, I guess I should get used to that. No, I'm pretty okay. I've got some pain in a leg from running. I don't really know what it is that I've done, but it feels like something a bit nasty. So I'm a little bit worried about that. I run a lot, and then not to be able to run always really, affects me. It's kind of the way of getting out some energy and, that kind of thing.
Where in your leg is it?
It's in my thigh, like down the side, from the side of the hip to the knee, right in the middle. So I think I know what it is. It's something I haven't had before, so I'm trying to understand why now. And I went for a long run yesterday, and because it felt better, and then this morning when I woke up, it was quite painful. Like even walking, it's very stiff. So I'll spend some time this evening, try and stretch a bit and see if that helps. What else? No, everything's pretty good. Life's busy with this little duckling. I was at a friend's 50th birthday party yesterday evening, which was really special. I thought of all of you while I was there. There was just a very nice atmosphere, lots of very open, warm people and interested in discussing things. And I think that's about it. That's about all that's going on.
Just curious, where are you moving to when you actually sell your place? I was curious.
I don't know, Sam, actually. I've decided it was time to go, and I'm going to figure it out as I go along. So I'll probably, when you sell a property, you often have a couple of months time. So I think I'll rent somewhere in the short term. But my plan is to move south, so nearer to Stockholm. I was talking a bit to Anna actually about it. I've been trying to look for a cooperative of some form, maybe on a farm. People who are interested in growing vegetables or having animals. And if I stick close to Stockholm, I'm hoping then I can have the part of life with nature and animals, which I enjoy, but also into the city for meetings and work stuff. And I'd like to find a way of putting those two bits together, which this little duckling actually helped me realize. that this was a big part of my life when I was a kid. And yeah, although it takes up quite a lot of time, it's a bit of a pain having this thing running after me everywhere. It's actually, I've remembered, you know, how it was to be a kid and have all of these chickens and ducks and all kinds of things. So yeah, so we'll see. We'll figure it out. Although I think Gertrude offered that I could hop in the car and come on over if I needed to. So there'll be a duck involved in that also if that happens. Yeah, but we'll see.
I'd be happy to check in. I actually thought I was going to miss this meeting this morning because I had a 7:30 a.m. appointment that got canceled right at 7 a.m. So that's why I'm here. And I also just found out there was someone coming in about 27 minutes to go visit the puppies, but they also canceled. This is kind of an unusual day. So 2 cancellations right at the beginning of the morning. So that leaves my morning free. I'm scaling up a bunch of travel. I have to go to Philadelphia, Portland, Maine, Philippines, Chandigarh, India, and Sunnyvale, California, all in the next few months. So I'm really trying to figure out how to do it and also squeeze in a visit to one or more of you, hopefully, at least to the London. I didn't even mention London, yes, but that's also another trip that's coming up. So anyway, I'm really hoping to be able to meet some of you in that locale, if possible. Also,
when will you be in London, Sam? Do you have any idea yet?
No, I don't. That's why I have to take all these trips and stack them up and map them out with when my daughter starts school and when I have to go to California. So I'm still doing all of that, but it's pretty fun what I'm doing and keeps me busy, you know, keeps me off the streets. And here, unfortunately, it's unseasonably warm. It feels like high 80s, 90s, not quite as hot as 100 degrees, that 38 degrees someone mentioned, but it's getting close to that. Yeah, Gertrude, yeah, you were really enjoying that yesterday, I noticed. But anyway, on another front, I have 7 homes to find for my wonderful puppies. The 2 puppies that had little medical issues both got adopted, surprisingly. So all the remaining puppies are perfect, according to the vet. So if any of you know anyone who likes golden retrievers, these are purebred Goldens. And so come on up to Camino Island, pick one up or more. I trust that all of you can provide good homes, and the friends that you would recommend would be providing good homes. So I prefer to do it through the personal network. Anyway, so enough of a check-in for me. I'm glad to be here, unexpectedly so. Over.
Can I just add about London that I'm going to be there in October. So I thought, I haven't mentioned this to you yet, Anna, but I thought maybe I might have the chance to see you. So I don't know if that's... It's not decided yet. I've got a conference that I'm speaking at, so there's a couple of days for that, but I can probably be flexible.
Cool. Yeah, keep us appraised of that, and I'll try and work that into the schedule. And I actually have other friends that Flota Heglin is there, David Price is there, obviously Anna's there. So there's a number of people that we could meet if London were the locus. Over.
This is Carl. I'm near Washington, D.C., and we're in our typical southern summer pattern of chance of widely scattered thunderstorms every afternoon. So, and things. I just got back from a school trip last week, which is why I've missed the past couple weeks. I guess it's still... it's trying to get some new projects started and really looking at, I guess in kind of preparing for the 50th anniversary there of Doug Engelbart's demo. He's been a big influence on many people in this this group, I've kind of identified the whom to augment first is scholar practitioners and improving the process of praxis. As kind of answering that question that Doug had asked. Actually in 62, because then that's what led. I've always been more focused on the human side, intellectual side, rather than the innovation. That was the means to his real purpose of wanting to augment human intellectual capabilities to solve increasingly complex problems, which is more needed than ever now. So, and I've got, so trying to get some communities of practice started is that's always very challenging, and how to get something new, and then how do you get people to engage, particularly in person, and things. So that's kind of my challenges right now. Next.
Gertrude, how are you? Harry, you're muted. I saw your lips move.
Harry, do you know if Tammy is coming? She isn't. Or
I know that Tammy was planning on making some coffee for herself around 8 or 9 p.m. last night. And she said last time she did it, she was up until 4 a.m.
Yes, she might be sleeping.
She followed asleep around 5 a.m. So I'm suspecting that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, for her, I hope she's sleeping. I just got back in the house, climbing over the balcony because I locked myself out. Because there was a little festival just in the park outside, and it was lovely last time, and so it appeared to be this time as well. But I was busy doing all the work I kind of did not do this week and want to have finished before the next week starts. So I'm a little bit square eyes in front of my screen at this moment. And I want all my stuff finished because next week I'm flying to Canada, and I want to have all my shit together at that point, which is quite a load to do. Yeah. So with that, I'm here.
Harry, make a detour down to Seattle. Come look at puppies. Okay.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well, you can. It would be easier if you come over. You can see Tammy and me in one go. And going to the US, you seem to need a visa and all that, so it feels complicated.
I wasn't aware.
Yeah, well, you live on the inside, that's why.
I mean, when we go to Europe, I guess we don't need a visa. So I thought it was.
We are not the USA. The USA feels very unfriendly to foreigners.
I agree.
Arrogant and friendly.
Actually becoming pretty unfriendly to domestic people too.
Yes. I don't want to go into the kind of details I had to fill in just to have because I'm flying over Chicago. So I'm just even in the airport, and for that I had to get some kind of visa-like thing to be there as a tourist for 1 hour. Yeah, you never know with those foreigners. So I have to get some shit together, but I sometimes have the sense I'm not the only one.
yeah, I'm for Esteban. I'm Gertraud, living in the middle of Germany, north of Frankfurt, and I'm kind of fallen out of time this week. My husband is away. I don't have any school kids. Everybody's on vacation. And I even didn't read my emails lately. And so I had some reminders. So it's like I'm in a completely different mode than just normal work. Even though I'm working from home, it's different, completely different at the moment. So actually my husband is in London at the moment, giving a teaching photo course in London. Yeah, and I was kind of, yesterday I was, after we hung up, I was kind of meditating on the subject showing up, and I resonated very much with things in that direction, what you said, Sam. And like for me, being in this group as such is something. I mean, if we're not recorded, it's okay, but now we are recorded. I think a year ago or so, I wouldn't have come in. So this is, I was pondering on this. Yeah. So
I don't understand, Gertrude. What are you saying? That it made a difference that you're recording?
Oh, sorry. I'm just referring to our call yesterday where you were not present. It was about showing up, just being, having something to offer, and being on the stage. Everybody can see you, judge you, whatever that is, and you better be humble, you better be in the second row, you better step back and not take that place, that space. So I'm using my own words, so if it doesn't resonate with you, Sam, I don't want to put words in your mouth. It's just what I was pondering on and what I know very well. So showing up is for me a big thing. So most people don't think so, but it's yeah.
Can you say more about that? That feels really interesting. Is it been like you've been in a process over time with that, or what does showing up mean for you?
When I looked from the outside and Sam was talking, it was very clear. I mean, it's so welcome that you, I mean, we set up that date that you have that space. So of course it's okay that you talk most of the time. But on the other side, it feels awkward, it feels uncomfortable. I shouldn't take that attention. I shouldn't take so much time. I shouldn't take so much maybe energy, or is it okay? And so I'm always checking, like, and it could be anything. It could be just calling people for marketing reasons, or publishing. So everybody was talking about blogs. We all have blogs, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, so in a personal context, it's easy, but just to go in the open. So writing the book was not the content the problem, but writing down something that you want to publish. And then people can just, in German, that they rip their mouth off. That's a German expression. So it's open for judgment.
Yes. So that's the tension, get out, Oda. Is that the tension that it brings? The judgment of others?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware that Doug hasn't yet checked in, but
Thanks,
this is
Anna.
a really interesting subject that I would like to continue to talk about. If Doug, you could check in and let's come back to this.
Yes, and Doug, could you tell me why you always want to be the last one?
And actually, well, because I find so many times that something is said or shared by somebody else that negates my need to do it. So that's usually the reason.
We have to do the work.
But also, well, you know, sometimes, and but also Esteban hasn't checked in. So consistent with the thing that you noted, which is I prefer to hold the last position. Esteban, would you like to check in before I go, and then we can return to Anna and where we were? It's not mandatory, by the way.
I'm having a little hard time listening to all the conversations because the audio keeps going in and out, but I'm trying to do my best to hear what each has to say. So that's why I sent the note. I hear part of the conversation and part of the conversation goes off. Maybe that's part of the experience. Usually that also happens in other domains, so it's not that different.
Well, we can hear you perfectly, Esteban.
Thank you. And
so if you would like to take the stage, you're welcome to.
I'll leave it with Doug.
Okay. So, well, first of all, I'm going to do last first. Gertrude, where you went, for me, is actually where I was coming into today in this conversation, and it sort of connects a circle with yesterday's conversation with Sam, and Sam sharing about sort of the moment of truth where he did not step up or show up, where the fear stopped him from taking the space and the position and all of that. And what came up, what came up for me is how much the current system really programs and trains us to be in fear. And how many ways to Sunday can our fear button and be pushed or triggered to not speak, not do, not say, not step up, not tell somebody's fly is down until they zip it up, not intercede, not just to not own something that in truth and reality we're entitled to be and do. Nobody's born unentitled to speak and to be heard and to do. Morning, Tammy.
Morning.
Everybody placed money on the idea that when you told Sam you were having coffee last night, that you were probably asleep.
I actually woke up to Sam's ding, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll make tea."
You mean when I just pinged you this morning?
Yeah.
Sorry to wake you up then.
No, it's good. It's good. So I'll arrive. Nice to see everyone.
So that's just it's a constant and ever-present question for me about how to relieve that fear or anxiety that I think stops. Well, we have over 900. Somebody mentioned almost 1,000 members of this group, and how many of them, for that reason, are not here right now? Like, what stops people from clicking and logging in and participating, and it's very easy. I'm very aware of the fact that I take for granted the ease and comfort with which I do this, but the recording button, the being on camera and visible, all of that stuff are huge asks for most people. Like, it's a really high bar for most people, subjectively, like, to feel like they're entitled and that they can do it, and they don't have to worry about judgment. They don't have to worry about making a mistake or screwing up or embarrassing themselves or being disrupted, whatever. All the millions of voices in the back of people's heads that intercede between them and them living as big a life as they can live. So that's a really big thing, and I spend a lot of time thinking about that, and would love others in this group to be thinking about that, and for us to be figuring out ways of approaching it to increase the invitation, lower the barrier to entry, encourage folks to step up, step in. So that's been living loud and large from yesterday to now, and on the sort of terrestrial plane, it looks like I think we have landed on a move place location, a home location, which is going to be in Southwest Michigan, depending upon whether a guy is reasonable on our rent offer. And it's in the middle of farm country. And from a logistics standpoint, probably about as inconvenient as humanly possible, but it's smack dab in the middle of a county within which all of my wife's extended farm family are related. Like, the whole population of this county in Michigan are all connected by blood one way or another. So we're beginning to put arms around all of that and figure it out. So with that, I'm complete, and I turn the reins over to Anna to pick up where Gertrude left off. And Tammy, actually, if you're awake and firing, you're welcome to check in. Obviously, I was the last check-in, so you're now the last check-in, and I'm no longer always the last check-in.
Okay, well, I will, here's Tammy's 12 minutes after opening my eyes. Morning. It was interesting when the bing went off, I was already waking up. So don't worry, Sam. And of course I wanted to be here. what you said about the high bar for people for entry, for showing up like this, it is, and it took me years and years and years to meet the deep uncomfortability that it is to be visible on recorded video. And there are a lot of internal barriers that I had to meet and work with to be able to do this. And I think that there's a lot of around being seen and being comfortable to be transparent, that it is not super easy or comfortable. And but there's some really beautiful things in there to figure out. And I feel like we've all been kind of doing that together. So I'm really grateful to be able to do this with a group of people so that we're all kind of learning, what happens when I actually speak my truth? And I really appreciate Lucy encouraging us all to review, because that's step 2. Step 2 is, well, what do I really look like? And how can I witness myself without discomfort? Starting with. And then the deeper learning of having myself, being able to witness myself and see, that's where I went away. The guard came down, and I wasn't able to say, there's also, for me, it takes me a minute to be able to process something, to be able to respond. And for example, in last Sunday's conversation where we went deep with Jaswinder, rewatching that was really powerful. Watching all the different people's faces and what was really happening for people. Very powerful. And so while I recognize that it's a high bar, it's an important bar. We need to be able to I need to show up as exactly who I am and feel comfortable. And I think that the level of work that's possible when groups of people choose to do that together is really deeply profound. And I don't know what the conversation was prior to that, but I also feel that it's all needed. It's also needed that there are places that are perhaps not recorded, as Gertrude was suggesting at the end of last session, or that they're not just put out to the group, but rather really intentionally shared with those who it's appropriate to share with. So all of those are kind of things to deeply consider, and I'd love to have us really consider that together. So that's some early morning thoughts on transparency and showing up, inspired by your share, Doug.
Okay, I'm going to come back in. I want to present a very different take on that showing up. Because for me, and I have felt this right from the beginning, and we had a discussion about this very early on, I feel that the fear and discomfort that people feel in making presentations is justified. It's a valid fear and a valid discomfort, because for me, that is the old paradigm of the lecture, of the person making a presentation. It's a performance. It's not just a conversation, it's a performance. And in order to do that, of course, you're judging yourself, you're putting yourself up there. It's a completely different experience from having a conversation. So I'm feeling that now. I'm making a sort of presentation now because I'm putting a different idea. My feeling is that many people here make presentations rather than have a conversation. I've always found that difficult, and I continue to find it difficult. People take too long to say something that they could say much quicker and briefer, and they repeat themselves over again, and I'm probably doing the same thing now. And I think it's good to be scared and uncomfortable, as I'm feeling now, rather than having a conversation, which, and if we didn't, the bar is actually us putting it up that high. If we're expecting people to come here and present in that way, rather than just make conversation, which we could do with anybody. That's me, I'm over.
What I heard in what you said, Anna, was that this is kind of how we go through life in general. That we kind of don't, well, just give me a minute to try and grab hold of this. We don't take it for given that we're accepted. We kind of have to earn it. So we're kind of preparing our, we feel we have to present everything, you know, to convince somebody or to be clear and understood, or I think it sits quite deep to do presentation rather than conversation. I just had a feeling when you were saying that, I felt that quite strongly.
So are you saying that if you felt accepted, then you would find presentation much easier?
I don't know whether I was just thinking of it as that it's kind of the way we do a lot of our interaction is to take a presentation style. I've never felt uncomfortable doing this, that it's recorded, which is, I don't know, in the past maybe I would have done, but I've thought very, very little about it. When I first joined, the only discomfort I had was, I don't know, first, like, who are these guys, what are they doing? And the second was that it was very obvious to me, here's a bunch of really intelligent, committed people. And, you know, wanting to honour that and not say anything dumb. But that was very much towards all of you, not about, I didn't actually think about anyone else watching. But for me, definitely presentation, there's always there's an element of having to convince rather than just like offering what I have and someone can take it or leave it. There's a, you know, to just say, okay, well, this is me. And if you want it or you don't want this idea, either is fine. But we have to try and convince. We feel that we have to try and convince. So I don't know, it feels like it sits quite deep in, you know, the other things we've talked about, Anna, recently about, what was it, Gertrude, you were there also, about belonging. You know, am I in the right place? It kind of, for me, it connects a bit to that.
Yes, but I'm also linking it up to a paradigm that we've learnt all our lives to do with presentation, that people, that teachers, parents give you lectures, teachers give you, it's the same authority structure.
Yeah.
So we're putting people into that authority structure, and then we wonder why they get scared and why they feel uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Presentation for you is a kind of top-down thing, Anna?
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah.
It isn't for me, but okay.
Me neither. I take it, as a deep curiosity in finding out about someone, which is, I think, how we were hearing Tammy, and this is what I experience when people are hearing me tell my story. I don't feel like I am telling anyone what to do or that I'm attached to anyone believing what I say. I'm just very appreciative that people are willing to listen to me. And that's an acceptance, which is an expression of love. And I think that's what I feel when we do these things on Saturdays.
Well, that's really interesting. That, yeah, that it's having people's attention, which makes you feel accepted. And I mean, we're all different and we all have different needs. And I feel much more like gone blank. I feel much more like I was God, I've forgotten her name. Lucy was saying that acceptance, yeah, it's to do again with acceptance from other people, feeling that we need that sort of validation. Does it come from other people or does it come from ourselves? Do we bring it with us so that we can just be and I mean, it's fine. I shouldn't really, I don't feel I have a right to say there is something wrong with you talking and people listening to you and you getting the feeling of being accepted and you like that. Why should I even comment on that? It feels like, what's wrong? Why can't you do that?
Go ahead, Harry.
Anna, I'm curious to hear from you, from your inner perspective. What need are you addressing within yourself when you talk about conversation and acceptance and things? Because I'm curious what's happening inside of you at this point, if I may.
Yeah, it's we were talking about giving and receiving, and the fact that that is a simultaneous thing. When people are listening to you, I guess you feel that your words are being accepted. Trouble is, it doesn't feel like people are free to say, I don't like that, or I don't want to hear that, or because it's a crowd, it's a mass thing. But when you're just talking one-to-one or in a small group, I don't know. Maybe I should just shut up.
I think it's two. I think this is two different things, or two different facets of the same event on its face. I think there is old paradigm, old model, which is power, authority, control, and position, where it's not volitional to be in the audience. You're there to be programmed or to learn or to do something or to be judged or to be tested or to be evaluated. You know, there are structural setups that are about power, control, and authority. And as audience, you're not there volitionally, and it is not an interactive participatory sport. It's you're there to receive and be imposed upon. But I also think, you know, all things being equal, what's happening in the Saturday construct is based very much on an invitation by everybody in attendance to the person who's being given the stage. It's an invitation, a solicited invitation to share and to receive and connect and get a download and, you know, poke and probe and question and experience one person's life carry. And so I think intention, to me, has a lot to do with this. And experience, sort of the experience and frame, has a lot to do with whether something is impositional or whether, in fact, it's what you alluded to, which is it's a simultaneous give and receive, independent of who's talking or who's listening and what's being talked about. That each moment experientially is just being experienced through that lens. That it's a flow, a mutual flow of values back and forth. And that's a living thing to me, like embodied emotional, spiritual. It's all, it's an experienced thing. It's not a construct or an intellectual exercise.
Yeah, maybe it's just, you know, something that I find difficult just because of my...
I think that makes it interesting for me, Anna. What is difficult for you?
Can I jump in while you're thinking, Anna?
Please, yeah.
So I just want to kind of land in the idea of the TED Talk for a moment. You know, it's this sort of one-way communication that's where really crafted, and you know, it's someone's body of work that's condensed into 18 minutes or whatever it is, and it's one way, and there's a bunch of people listening, and that's amazing. But what it is it's not connected to the listeners, other than this thin line of clapping or not clapping, or, you know, just being in the room. But this space is different. And I think it's really interesting to look at, you know, what it is, you know, even this moment, 8 people are listening and I've got the mic. And so I need to feel, is what I'm saying on point? Are people phasing out and not really listening? Is what I'm saying actually relevant? And this is something that I can see and feel through seeing you guys and knowing that at any point you guys can be like, Tammers, you've gone off the rails. I'm not hearing you. And that's important information for me to know if I'm speaking into the groups listening or not. And in terms of the Saturday barn raising, I mean, you'll all know how much I struggled with my 4 sessions, and that's my work to do. right? That shows me where my growth and development is. And I feel that it's important to slow that down, and you know, these presentations that we may do in this group is a completely different thing than a TED Talk, because each of us are invited and encouraged to be a part of the weave of what's being shared. And I think we're blurring the line between presenter and being presented to as a whole contributive space, where if I'm like, hey Sam, with what you just shared, this is what it made me think of. This is a person that I know that you should really talk to. This kind of, you know, shared knowledge space, shared information space where there is flows in it. And I think that that's a very different scenario than a lecture, a straight up lecture. There's other things that are happening here. And and great, go. I was just feeling into that lecture piece, but I'd love to hear what you say, Anna.
I'm just feeling quite emotional. And for me, that is a sort of a clue that these sort of presentations don't really connect emotionally. Now, I know that I heard that you became very emotional during your, but it wasn't something, you know, you feel sort of bad about that. That isn't supposed to be in the presentation. That isn't, you know, that wasn't a good presentation because you were emotional. So yeah, I'm feeling that maybe it's just a different type of communication that I don't enjoy, because there isn't room for that emotional connection.
I'm a bit lost, I have to say. It has something to do with what is a presentation, what is a conversation, what is that Saturday thing. Yeah, and what purpose attracts what people, and who shows up and is interested or not. And even when Lucy was talking, you both used we pretty often, and I didn't know which we that was. So when you say I'm emotional, or so, then I can relate to you. But when we say we, it's like including the others, and it could be different others. And I kind of got lost what we are talking about really. So yeah.
You know, we've actually, I think, come a long ways since September. You know, initially we just started off as, hey, let's just get together and talk, because we had this activity and we wanted to keep it going. Over time, there seemed to be a number of ways to run some experiments or run some different kinds of conversations. So that's what evolved, at least today, into 4 different types, you know. And each one of those guidelines, that may be a triggering word, but every one of those mini agreements, whether it's unblocking, whether it's open space, whether it's Friday experiment, whether it's barn raising, whether it's hot seat, you know, whether it's one person speaking, you know, it serves to pull some people in and also drive other people's away. Simple fact is, you know, when a session gets scheduled on a Thursday, unfortunately, I can't participate. Just like if it occurs on a Friday, usually I cannot participate. On Saturdays and Sundays, I make myself available. And the fact that we're doing these one-way conversation, not one way, but one-person focused conversations, I don't think anyone ever said, hey, there's no room for emotion here. I don't think that was one of the guidelines. And yet, if I find it curious that that's the reaction you have. And I don't know whether or not that's because you've been there or whether you listened to it afterwards and felt that way. There's certainly on my part, a very welcome position. In fact, I said that at the beginning of yesterday. I welcome stimulus because that's what I thrive on. I like to respond to questions that probe deeper into what I'm saying or what I believe or what I'm feeling or what I'm trying to convey. And actually, this hooks up to another connection with Esteban that I hope he's still listening, which is anytime we're doing this, there's at least 5 things going on. It's not a simple thing, okay? There's whoever's saying something, there's the intended audience, there's the unintended audience, there's the medium in which it's being conveyed, and then there's the actual transmission itself. There's at least those 5 things, there's probably more. And each of those has certain characteristics. So to say very quickly what's going on in some of these conversations, I think is a very big step. And I hope that we can all be open to the fact that there's a number of different ways to have these conversations. You know, think of conversational experiments with Fleming. That's yet another way, right? So we all pick and choose with our own feet/keyboards, whether or not we're here or not. And so I'm only hoping that if we have a thing that could be most welcoming of you, Anna, maybe we could actually try and create that kind of a forum, you know, rather than saying, hey, you know, this is uncomfortable for me here, so let's not do it. That's where I get triggered. Over.
I also always trust the weak signal. Like what Anna is saying, there's something really important here. I'm really glad we're focused on it.
Me too.
I would like to add another thing that is important for me for Saturdays, especially. It's not about me. It's like when I'm coming into Saturdays, it's only about that person who is in the middle. And so if I like it or not, it's not for me, it's not the point. It's creating that space in which that person can arise and be seen, and of course when they're so you said, okay, I'm through with this part and now I would like to have the feedback from the group. That's okay, but it's up to you. For me, you could talk 2 hours in a row and it's not really about what I get out of this or if it's interesting for me or whatever yeah. So I get a lot out of this to come to know you more and so, but so that the Saturdays is very special for me compared to the others. And what Tammy was saying, this part is also important, but I think in TED Talks, it's ideas worth spreading or something like that. So people come to that conference exactly to hear what other people have to share, and they love it, not each and every aspect of it, but there is, I think there is some kind of that space as well. So I couldn't let that stick as you shared it. And the other conversations like today, I think there is another purpose. It's about that sensing into and yeah.
Esteban?
One of the things that I kind of home in is I like to use a triad. It's kind of like in a conversation, there is my side, there's your side, and then there's the shared side. If that happens, usually each keeps their own side and don't validate if their side corresponds with the other side, and things go from there to other parts. In that regard, in that triad, I also use that triad for many other models that I employ. So for example, you have past, present, and future. There's 3 parts, and we can get into a lot of things related to that. And then there is the part of thinking, feeling, and doing, which is also a triad. And some people are kind of like focused on how they feel about things instead of also bringing in the thinking part and the doing part. And the curious thing is that when you point at what they're doing, not what they think they're doing or what they feel they're doing, but what they are doing, in many cases they don't want to recognize it, because they know if they recognize it, they're not going to want to repeat it. Does this make any sense to you guys, or do you make sense from this?
I find the idea of sides really revealing, that you have your side and that someone else has their side. That is never a way I would talk about a conversation. And I get this feeling in what you offer that you're evaluating how others, what words they choose, against your view or your system, which matches up with having a side. So that's what I heard in what you offered.
In a way, yes. Can I modify that a little bit? Okay. When you talk about me judging, yes, I do judge. We all judge. We all evaluate things one way or another. So for me, or for someone to say, let's not judge, that's like saying, let's not differentiate between this and that. Instead of, let's learn how to differentiate between this and that, and how to judge, and judge accordingly as one better judge in such a situation. And the judging that I like, it's a little bit like what was said earlier. I'm not sorry about who said it, but I noticed what was said, not who said it. And it has to do with liking it or not liking it. And for me, is when we judge, it's not about it agreeing with my side, but rather how one's side agrees with what happens to be, whatever that be. And if you notice, I usually present ideas using a couple of models. So for instance, my side versus the side I like to use are similar but different. Can you make sense of this?
There's a lot of sides. What if you get rid of sides? Where would you be then?
Well, when you get rid of sides, you focus on the issue. Okay? And yes?
No, you go ahead. If you get rid of side.
Like for instance, let me use an example that I constantly face, and I have a really hard time dealing with it. And maybe you guys can help me figure out how best to deal with that situation. And it's the case of the relativist versus the absolutist. Okay? And the relativist likes to see things relative to how they see things or how the other one sees things. But usually they have a really hard time with the absolutist stance, because if they accept the absolute stance, they become an absolutist and cease to be a relativist. But at the same time, if they reject the absolute stance, they reject being a relativist. And so in a way, either way you look at it, the relativist can stand being a relativist because they reject or accept the absolute position. Now, the absolutist can always choose whatever absolute truth they have to be the relative truth, and at the same time be both a relativist and an absolutist, blur that distinction out and just focus on the truth. What usually happens to me is that I'm in a conversation and someone will present a stand that is the relativist stand. And they insist that we use that stand instead of everybody focusing on the absolute stand of what be right, what be best, what be proper to do. And I'm not saying that what be proper to do be what I say, or what you say, or what the other says. I'm just saying that whatever that is, we should focus on that. So what do you perceive from all this?
I perceive a lot of assumptions. I perceive a lot of frameworks that are given. I perceive a lot of definitions that are assumed. I perceive that there is reality in the term absolutist. And I would question whether or not there is openness to conversation, because I think openness and judgment are not mutually exclusive. Of course, everyone judges. Of course, everyone has discernment. The question is whether or not that drives your interaction style, or whether there's an openness that drives your interaction. Over.
When you say, is there an openness, what do you mean by that?
Are you willing to consider that someone reasonably intelligent, possibly as intelligent as you, could have a reasonable position that might be curious to understand? That would be openness to me.
Well, yes. Sorry for the blunt response, but yes. One of the things that I learned the other day, I tried to share stories that or insights that I have had as a way to open up and maybe facilitate understanding where I'm coming from or where I'm heading or what the situation may be. And I used to have very strong reactions to interactions I had where people would basically react violently against me. And it usually had, I came up with the idea that this had to do with a style that I kind of used or implied when I was working. Not that I wanted to do it, but that I did. And for me, being open to a conversation is, okay, I'm going to hear what you have to say. I'm going to validate what you're saying, that what I understand corresponds with what you're saying. I'm going to consider that. I'm going to evaluate that and other alternatives and reach a conclusion as to if to pursue that road or pursue an alternate road. Okay. What happens is that I did not want to invest time in erroneous directions. I prefer to invest time following the better road. And what happens is that I would not show the other person that I understood what they had to say, had evaluated it and deemed it not as better as something else. And I wanted to focus and show them something else. But then the interaction was kind of like, well, why do we have to focus on what you have to say instead of focus to what I have to say? And that is usually kind of very strange situation, because if I decide to listen to what they have to say and understand it and consider it, and then they don't take the time to do the same thing, it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to tell you some things, and then you tell me something, but after I tell you something, I leave. Instead of sticking around, hearing what you have to say, and both reaching a conclusion based on the different versions. So yes, there are a lot of assumptions. And yes, there are a lot of models integrated together. And there are a lot of unique distinctions that I use. And still, I hope that you see that when you presented what you said, I inquire into your meaning and proceeded from there. Can you make sense from this?
Gertrude?
There are two things. One, the first thing that came to my mind when you asked the question was this, the absolute and the relative. I thought Ken Wilber, amber and orange green, something like that. The fight between two levels of development. That was the first thing that came to my mind. And then when you pondered on it, I thought you tried to solve this conversational problem on an intellectual level, and that doesn't work. This is not about concepts and not about methods and models. I mean, they are useful sometimes to then understand, but it's more like we actually, I think we try to talk from heart to heart and have our thoughts infuse that, but not on a meta level, to talk on a meta level and try to find the concepts. And
yes,
the third
right.
thing, may I just finish? Sorry, the third thing is what you were talking about. I kind of feel it right now. And
Also,
this, yeah, how can we contribute to you? How can we support you in that? It's not about models.
well, if you're talking a lot about how you feel about the situation, okay, and your perception of basically the gist of the conversation, it's a lot focused on how you feel with the interaction. And from my stand is, yes, I am presenting it more of an intellectual side, or how you should feel. And this usually creates an issue with a lot of people, because are we gonna engage in how we feel, how we think, or how we act? In fact, in one of the conversations in Facebook, I'm not sure with whom, or if you were part of that interaction, there was this whole issue of doing things irrespective of how you feel or how you think or how you imagine them to be. Just doing them and see what happens and learning from them. And in this conversation that we were having a little earlier on, I had this sensation that we needed to. I usually present kind of like an exercise where I try to push people to.
Esteban, can you take a pause for a minute? Because Tammy had her hand up and wanted to say something, and I'd also would like to. Tammy?
Well, thank you, Esteban, for sharing. And one of the things that I'm thinking about is the need to be right, and what happens when things turn into debate and we're like putting facts up next to each other, and a certain hierarchy of rightness. And I think that's one way to have a conversation. It's kind of like sharpening your sword against each other, and clarifying whether or not what's understood is understood, and these things. But there's also something I remember from, I don't know, it's not going to land super well maybe, but do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And not that happiness is the whatever. That's the problem I have with that statement. But there's a point in there around being right. And I feel that what I'm motivated to experience more in these spaces is how what I think and feel and what I do in action, because this is an action we're having as a conversation, is how do I feel the entire group? How do I sense into when what next wants to be said as a group field? And so, yes, there's some resonance pieces. There's the importance of everybody putting their hand up when they say that they don't agree. It makes it slow, but it's important to hear every part of what's in the field. And that these conversations for me are more, they're a perfect micro expression of what collaboration is. And what it is to kind of do us differently, as Doug says, do things in a new way. How do I share what I actually think and feel in a resonant field with others, with everyone else able and present to interject, put their thoughts beside it, as Harry likes to say, so that we can understand more, not in the aid of being right and being like, oh yeah, Tamara, she was right when she said that, but rather a group sense of where we want to go together, because we're going somewhere here. It's not just that we're, marking time on a calendar saying, oh, I put in my 12 hours of GCC this week. It's that we're actually really looking to be differently together, understand our emergent purpose by listening long enough to each other and doing the practice of, this is what I have to say, and now I'm complete.
Yeah. Well, I kind of.
And I like to be right and happy.
Esteban, I have a suggestion to make, that you listen to what the others say and then answer, not right away.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify the expression about being right. It was not, or be happy. It was, you can be right or you can be close.
Oh yeah. I knew it was different than that. Thanks.
I just wanted to tweak that.
That's the power of the group mind. I was wrong, and I don't care. I'm good. Thanks, Doug.
I don't think you are entirely wrong.
Sorry, Carl.
Somebody changed that sentence to use it in the context of how you used it, and I was going to say exactly the same thing, Esteban. And it would be kind of, I completely understand you don't want to use your camera, but it would be nice to. I would like to be able to say this and see you at the same time. Something you said earlier suggests that you've had quite a lot of challenge in like people understanding your ideas or how they've been received, or And I'm wondering if you've like reflected on that. What is there a common thing that keeps coming up for you? Why do you keep receiving that kind of negative reaction from people? Because it feels for me when you're talking that you're very much looking out at everyone else and doing this right or wrong thing, and not so much turning it around and looking at yourself and what role do you have in that interaction.
I'm still listening to the other to the others' feedbacks. Maybe let me know when it's appropriate for me to respond.
Carl, you had something.
Yeah, I mean, I think this conversation is kind of proving Esteban's point and stuff. Everybody else is in this, is engaged at like this embodied level and emotional level. He's at the intellectual level, and he's trying. So I see it as he's trying to understand others and things. But I think it sounds to me, Esteban, like you're just too inside your head, and that's why that engaging other people, I tend to be the same way. So I think that if other people are coming like here are coming from this emotional and embodied state, like I've been turning camera off because I'm incredibly tired and I'm yawning and type of stuff. So I don't want to have that recorded and things. Other thing. So I mean, there's all the body language, nonverbal cues and things. So that's kind of what I've been perceiving from the conversation. And there's also like, well, I posted a link there. I mean, there's the whole Senge systems thinker advocacy versus inquiry piece of things too. So that we tend to be very, I see us, we're usually in inquiry, and I feel like everybody's like in advocacy today. So you kind of in, so I'll stop it there.
Thank you, Carl. I like that. That's helpful for me. I also struggle with the concept of getting my mind clear and getting my world in order with the same clarity, and feeling great about it at the same time, and doing this all at the same moment. It's extremely difficult for me. Either my mind is a mess, or my room is a mess, or I feel kind of unhappy. Mostly it's a bit of everything. I could become more specific. I've got I'm been spending quite some time hanging out with Timmy because I like that a lot. And then I look around me and I forgot to do my groceries and wash my dishes and my plates. And I still have my work to do. And there was a nice festival in the park I wanted to be with, but I also wanted to join the GCC here. And that's just a small slice of how I operate these days. And it's not funny at all.
It's like affection, Harry, and then like the way you finished it off with that beautiful smile.
Love that.
These are the bodily cues, as where Carl probably referred to.
I have to go back to something else that appeared either yesterday or the day before. I forget which conversations. We've had several. In that what we're trying to do here, this community building that I think I'm part of, that I am here to try and create, feels like family. Feels like the kind of conversation we would like to have around a breakfast table or a dinner table, right? And I'm trying to get to know my family. You know, my sister Tammy, you know, my sister Lucy, my brother Doug. You know, those are the people I really want to get to know, because over time we have this large volume of micro stories. You know, we hear about this, we hear about that, we hear about successes, pains, you know, recoveries, happinesses, joys. That's the connection that I would love to see in a community. That's the kind of community I want to live in. And yes, occasionally somebody's going to have an accident, or somebody's going to, you know, do something they feel regretful about later on. You know, all of that's going to happen. But what's more important in a family? Is it the relationship, or the fact that, you know, somebody actually convinced me that something they said was right, you know, yesterday, you know? Yeah, all of that can happen. But in a society where we have strong connections, we can have those discussions. But if we actually separate ourselves by right and wrong and not have that strong backdrop, that strong netting of strong relationships to fall back on, then we have divisiveness. Then we have violence. Then we have disagreement, and eventually disappointment, and eventually more violence. So I think this way of creating connection first is what I'm trying to sense that we create and trying to help create in this kind of community. Over.
Okay, Esteban, maybe I would like to hear you now.
Well, yes, I do think a lot, okay? And one of the things that for me is very important is what is being said and not who is saying it. And in a way, it's not so much as how they are saying it. And this goes a lot to body language and all sorts of things that for me are very difficult to make sense of. In relation to me doing this constant what is right and what is wrong, and what's here to be done, well, this has been a constant in my life since I was a small kid. Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with dyslexia, but it's a situation where what you see or what you perceive is not necessarily what's written in the text. And so I have had to deal with that from an early age in rather strange ways. And this has extended not just to reading and writing, but to many other situations. So I am constantly evaluating if what I perceive to be corresponds to what's there, or if there's a difference. And a curious or funny thing happens is that sometimes I see what's there, even though most people don't, or don't want to see it, or pretend not to see it. And this creates a rather strange situation in that, yeah, I'm looking to see what's right and what's wrong. And usually I'm focused on what other people are seeing as right and wrong, and how they determine what is right and what is wrong. And basically, most people just do it how they feel, what they think, instead of doing an evaluation process where they validate if what they think and feel and do corresponds with what should be done, or what should be felt, or what should be thought. And this extends to many, many instances, like, for instance, the meaning of a word. Do words have meaning, or do we assign meanings to words? And usually it's a struggle when two people are in a dialogue or in a conversation where each wants to use their particular meaning of a word associated to a word, and they want to fixate on that because it gives them an advantage, because it, whatever. And the situation with me is I constantly present the other side. It's not that I can't feel or can't do or can't think, is that usually if someone is thinking a lot, I would say, well, how you feel? And if someone is feeling a lot, I usually would say, well, what do you think about this? And this creates a change of their way of thinking, which may be a bit of a challenge, but to me, it's just a way to see how congruent decisions are or actions are done based on how you feel, how you think, what you do. And if the three are congruent and you do the same, make the same choices, well, then that's great. But if there's a difference between those modes of thinking or of doing or of feeling, then we need to resolve the differences. And for instance, constantly I ask, does this make sense to you, or what sense do you make of this? Because usually people make whatever sense they want from the conversation. Earlier on, I used the example of someone calling you stubborn or someone calling you determinate. And what I felt the conversation followed as well. If they call me stubborn, I feel offended. But if they call me persistent, I feel complimented. And I often wondering is why some people may call you persistent in a sarcastic way, and so it's not a compliment, it's an insult. Or someone may say you're very stubborn, and you know that they're kind of joking about it, and they're making you feel, paying you a compliment of how determined you are. And the underlying issue that I keep working about is how can we deal with words and interactions in such a way that we push, pull, hold them towards better activities that are enriching to all. And this extends also including to judgment calls. Some people don't like to be judged. And they feel that if they are judged, they're being, I don't know, mistreated or whatever. But sometimes being judged is just being judged. It's just what someone does. And if it's, let me put it to you this other way. The other day I was in a conversation where someone did not understand what I was saying. They just didn't understand it. And the response is, I don't understand you, but you're wrong. And I'm kind of like, well, they could have said, I don't understand you. I can't make a decision if you're right or wrong. But given how I know you, you probably are right. Okay, and I'm just trying to express that the same situation can lead to different appreciations of the situation, and we can focus on creating this or that or the other thing. I hope you all see that what I did a few minutes ago, where I was asked to remain quiet and listen, and I did. But a short response I said of being right or being happy or being close or whatever is I'm pointing out that, wait a second, why do I have to make a choice between one or the other instead of one and the other? And I have a couple of examples to kind of make this point clearer. And it's one of them is the debate between the optimist and the pessimist, where they're debating if the glass is half empty or half full. And I add a third person, which is the realist, that realizes the glass is always full, half water, half air, and some other stuff in there. And maybe it's not about debating one or the other, but what to do with the glass and its contents and everybody around. That's one example I use. The other example I use is which comes first, the chicken or the egg? And well, I usually says, well, it was the rooster. It's an option that most people don't even consider, but well, it was the rooster. I hope you see the joke in that, but anyway, I'll leave it there.
Esteban, can you actually ask what question or what answer might be here that will take you away from the either or that you're posing?
Well,
I
what
don't
I'm
need an
posing,
answer, Esteban. I don't need an answer.
in case.
Esteban, I'm asking you to think on that question, not to answer the question.
Okay, why do you want me to think on the question of either or over other alternatives?
Because that's the joke that you were just telling.
Can you explain it? I don't see it.
Yes. You like to think of a third alternative other than the dualist approach that is often the way questions get framed. So I'm asking you to do the same.
You want me to think of a third alternative or a dual alternative?
That would be a good thing to think about.
Okay. And usually when the way I respond to that is I like to think of a singular triad because it's on either side of
I believe that a response.
duality.
I'm asking you to think about it, Esteban. I'm just asking. I'm not asking.
Sure, I'll think about it. Do you want me to think out loud or just think by myself, by the way?
It would be curious for you to think about this and then bring the rumination back to a subsequent conversation. Perhaps let some time.
Well, I just got something that says.
I know you have an immediate response. I know you have an immediate response. I know you because I recognize myself in you.
So you want me to wait to think about this and then let you know what I thought about this
Come back
later
next
on.
week. Come back next week and tell us what you've come up.
In other words, do you think enough of that question that you actually would be curious enough to come back and give us the ruminations that appear between now and then?
And even more powerful if you took the opportunity to rewatch this and see what was happening in the group as you were speaking and what you said and what you meant and how it was received and how it wasn't received and how you feel in your body as you experience it again. All of those things would be really powerful to hear your thoughts and feedback, considered feedback on.
It's funny because the research I've been doing is about praxis and being the reflective practitioner and and things. So that's exactly kind of what we're talking about today, which is usually why I listen in all the time, because there's just this seems to be this resonance going on with I think all of us kind of feel that because we're in similar spaces. So I do have to get going, work on a paper again, but as always, very thought-provoking, and glad I joined.
Great that we supported your research.
Another case study.
Can I say something quickly to Esteban, because I don't want this to be lost. Esteban, I just want to say thank you for sharing what you did about your dyslexia in childhood. Sorry, there's a duck tweeting. But I feel like I understand you a little bit better now. That was really helpful.
That's good.
I just want to say, first of all, we are just past 2 hours. I want to be respectful of everybody's time in terms of wrapping. I also, and I'd love to do a closing round, and I'd like to start the closing round just in service to Harry accusing me of always going last. And Esteban, first of all, I really want to thank you for coming. I also want to thank you for coming back when you had to drop out because of technical challenges. And I want to, not piling on, but I just want to offer the suggestion that if there was a possibility for a place to come from in relation to conversation, exchange, other people, and connection, other than the frames you've been using, would you be open to the possibility that such an alternative exists, even if it's not familiar or anything that you've experienced before? And I just want to highlight, you, at one point you said something, I raised my hand, but it went by too fast. But you said something to the effect of, how could we transcend the battle of mine versus mine versus yours, and right versus close. And the reason right versus close is an alternative, it's not a binary that can coexist, is because generally, when one person is right, it means they win. And in order for somebody to feel like they've won, there has to be somebody who loses. That's embedded in that construct. So if I don't want to set up a situation where there has to be a loser, then I also have to give up my devotion to being the winner or to being right. That's why it's right or close. And if you can give up being right, then you open the possibility to establishing closeness and connection. And I think that's very much what we're in journey and quest for here. That's very much what this practice, this group, this experimental journey and series of conversations are devoted to, which is how do we get past that and do us and do this differently, so that there's no right or wrong, there's no winners or losers, there's everybody contributing their generative potential and value to the whole at 100% and from a place of resonance. So that's just contextually and frame. I think what you asked is exactly what we're here for and what we're trying to do. And I really welcome you joining our journey. It's a learning for all of us. And with that, I'm complete.
Building on my link there, I think we're in violent agreement here. I don't know if I'm interpreting Esteban, I seem to be interpreting him completely differently from everybody else on the group. I see him having, I see you as asking questions and questioning how do we, but you're questioning like strictly from the intellectual frame. So, and everybody else is encouraging you. You gotta to explore from the feeling, the emotional and embodied presence and things. So, and then the other thing too is that, yeah, I'm very appreciative of your courage in just putting yourself out there. I mean, you ended up, we ended up having a conversation. So I think this is almost like a barn raising session for Esteban in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I want to add my thanks to you, Esteban, because the questions you're asking are not yours alone. They're actually representative of a large number of other people, many of whom are actually not here, perhaps because they perceive these differences. And there's a parable, so this almost smacks of lecturing, but the parable that comes to mind out of this conversation is, I had $1, somebody else has $1, we exchange dollars, we each have $1. I have an idea, you have an idea. We each exchange ideas, now we both have 2 ideas. And so rather than sides, I'd rather see whether we can actually take a learning approach to this, where we understand each other better and probably or possibly construct something that understands that each come into this with very reasonable viewpoints, and that what we can gain from each other is what can we co-create that makes us both learn. That's where I'd like to leave this. Over.
Well, I also have enjoyed listening to this. It was helpful to me because I felt so emotional at the beginning. So it was really good to just be able to listen. And I don't agree, as usual, that it's necessary to want to give up being right. I think it's okay to want to be right. And if you follow that, Esteban, you will find out what it is that you are looking for. So I don't think it's a question of giving up anything, but the fact that you've come here and are able to listen to us is a great step forward. And I hope you come back. And also helpful that you shared that about your childhood, because for me, a lot of the way that we are is determined by the experiences that we have as children. So I'd like you to return. Thank you.
In the chat, I was wondering about the container we hold here for belonging. And, you know, we've been really developing how to listen to each other. And I think that I feel that we are demonstrating it pretty well. And I really appreciate our focus today. And really, there's a lot of richness here because we're demonstrating what we're talking about at the same time. So I think that it's really powerful to really consider how do we welcome people. And I'm really grateful to have all of the different perspectives in the same place so that we can experience simultaneous truths and more of a wholeness of what's actually happening, which, you know, when I feel into myself, I'm like, okay, if I'm triggered by something, that's me, that's something I have to work on. So there's, you know, and I recognize that in others, so that when I see that Anna has got some emotion or is feeling something, I trust that there's something really important underneath there to pay attention to. And similarly, what you're bringing, Esteban, same thing. It's something that's really important for us to know is in the space, to recognize is in the space, and to respond in the moment as best we can, living what we've been learning around really listening. And it's interesting because a lot of what's been talked about is about the difference of perspectives. And I just have this sense that there's some barriers that we have or around really being able to see each other that, well, it's really hard to describe, but it's about being able to see together and respect each other's contributions in a way that is shown and felt. And my hope is that this space is a place where people feel that and if it's not felt, that can be what we're talking about next, so that the baseline of a welcome space to truly be authentic and present is maintained. And so with that, I'm complete.
A small aside on that one. It literally is difficult to see that with you, Esteban, in this session. Over.
I realized that. Is this coming through? Okay. Yeah, I realized that what I say sometimes is difficult to perceive. for example, I was basically proposing that instead of using an either-or situation, we shift over into the and, this and that and the other thing. And instead of recognizing that point, I was asked to think about either or, ruminate, and then come back and let you know what I thought about that. I also heard a lot of, well, we need to learn how to listen, you need to learn how to listen. And from my perspective, this sort of is a kind of a mirror where oftentimes I'm told to listen to someone, and it's not that I'm not listening to them, it's the other way around, is that they are not listening to something that I'm saying, but they can't see that, and so they want me to listen to them as a way for them not to hear what I have to say or what is being said by me. In a way, I'm a bit detached from this situation because I separate the individual from what the individual does, or the individual from what the ideologies the individual happens to have. And so I'm trying to have a dialogue about certain issues, and I understand the importance of listening to each other, but I also find that we need to talk about certain things in certain ways to realize those things. And so often I propose that instead of talking about problem solutions, which is a duality, we talk about situations, considerations, and actions we're going to take. And while it is a very simple model just to change from that duality to that triad and change the language we're using, for whatever reason, some people maintain that duality. And earlier on, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but someone said that for there to be a winner, there has to be a loser. And personally, I don't think that. I think that there can be winners, and we can help other people win, and we can be in win-win-win situations where there's a winner and everybody wins. And this was kind of mentioned in relation to the example using ideas, where ideas duplicate as we share them. And so basically is, what ideas are we sharing? And for me, an important idea to share is that we can have winners by having winners and being winners and helping others to win. So in a way, the go think and come back and tell us what you thought, I find to be kind of like a wild goose chase, where I'm being sent away to do something and then come back. But to me, this is more of a scheme that happens to take place as a way to not focus on that particular issue right now and here. I happened to be here today. I don't know why. I just happened to, when I sat on the computer, notice that this was happening now, and I joined in. Hopefully next week I'll join in too. If it's at the same time, same hour, I'll probably be here. Not sure, but hopefully things will turn out and maybe that would happen. What I would like to leave all of you guys with, or as a summary, is why is it we characterize things the way we characterize them? And what happens if we characterize those things using other terms that are still addressing the issue, but using other ways? So for instance, if you usually have a tendency to feel things, well, how about trying to think about things and see if you reach the same conclusion? And let me use a different terminology. If you are a visual person, maybe you need to use language that has to do with hearing things or how things taste. And I'll close it up with that.
I would really like to ask you, Esteban, about this experience of disconnection that you talked about. But we'll leave that for another time.
Sure.
My takeaway, my checkout. I thought it was very interesting, this session, and I thought I go back to listen to this one and the last one. They have kind of, for me, there's some resemblance. And what really touched me when you were talking about your childhood experience. I have a dyslexic daughter, and yeah, her struggle through school and how to find a way to do it differently, to perceive differently, to grab the world in another way that it makes sense, and be a kind successful and go through college. And so that resonated very much with me, and seeing what it takes, what we take for granted. So thank you for showing up, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey today.
I noted the question Esteban asked us on why do we characterize things with certain words. I summarized it for myself because I could not follow so fast. And I wonder about that as well. I noticed that if I receive a lot of like documents, and they always said document for Harry. That doesn't mean anything to me. And I immediately changed the title to document from the one who sent it to me, because then it's meaningful once more. And we have all those, and once we throw words and meaning at each other, probably somewhat the same way. And I also would very much like to have a more absolutistic framework to kind of give meaning to things. And I have always a dictionary at on my desk for that reason, to keep it keep my language as clear and understood as possible. But it's a struggle every day for me. And also this conversation was hard for me, because I hope that I can in myself connect my thinking to my feeling and act accordingly. But I just illustrated before, that's just a daily struggle for me. So I have hoped, as Esteban seems to do, that with clear thinking I could get over it, but I got lost there, because truth is kind of a boxed in thing. I just feeling that I've been studying the elephant of reality from just one perspective. And with that, I'm complete for the moment.
Jaswinder, you're our anchor. Do you have anything in closing before we call it a day?
Just coming out of my little slumberland stupor. It's very good, actually. I think that's the closest I've come to non-thinking while all those triggers are ongoing, and I've reframed. That's been very most kind of everybody not to disturb me or say something till now, which is superb. Esteban is at a very interesting stage of development where he's putting himself together. I would just like to say, just the last point he made is that the five senses do not develop at the same time. So sight, touch, sound, taste, etc., they develop in different times, and you can be, I'll just personalize this for the time being. When I was in the sound learning mode, and I'd been listening a lot more, and when the brain was focusing on the eyes, as it were, then I'd be using the eyesight more. Now when I'm out and about, I use a particular sense or a combination of as and when required. I can cross the road without having to turn my head, because I can tell which traffic is flowing, which way, is it safe or not, without having to look. So Esteban, it's nothing to worry about. We are all going to go through this stage, most of us. Enjoy. Thank you very much.
Okay, folks, have a wonderful Sunday, evening, day, afternoon, whatever's ahead of you. And thank you so much for being here and for co-creating this. Truly honored and grateful.
Timmy, could you stay on for a few minutes? Not recorded.